A waist-high raised bed at the garden center runs you even $300. But you can build one yourself for under $50 in a single afternoon with no power tools. And the trick that keeps it that cheap? It's the one part most folks build completely backwards. We get to it in step 3. And here's the thing. You do not have to be handy. If you can drive a screw with a screwdriver, you can build this. I gathered the specs the University Extension Services recommend, so this isn't guesswork. It's the same bed that lets you garden standing up, like you're working at your kitchen counter. No kneeling, no aching the next morning. And remember that money-saving trick I mentioned. It's coming up in step 3, and it's the reason you don't fill the whole thing with expensive soil. My grandmother had a bed just like this, built from old fence boards her neighbor was throwing out. She gardened at it well into her 80s. So let's build yours the same smart way, no matter your zone or your budget. First, let's talk about the plan, because the size is what makes it senior-friendly. Here's the plan. You want the top of the bed at about 30 to 36 inches off the ground. That's roughly kitchen counter height. Stand at your counter for a second and feel how straight your back is. That's the posture we're building for. Now the width. This part matters. Keep it no wider than 24 inches if you'll only reach it from one side. If you can walk all the way around it, you can go up to 4 feet. The rule is simple. You should never have to lean across the bed to reach the middle. If you're leaning, you've put the strain right back into your back, and we've lost the whole point. The length is up to you and your wallet. A bed about 4 feet long is plenty to start, and honestly, a 4-foot bed grows more lettuce and herbs than most folks can eat. Before we pick up a single board, let's talk about what you'll need to round up. It's a short list. Some wood for the box and the legs, a box of screws, a scrap of landscape fabric, a handful of free yard waste, which we'll get to, and 1 or 2 bags of soil. That's the whole shopping trip. No fancy tools, no special skills. Take it slow. Gather your pieces, and you'll have everything in one trip and one phone call to a neighbor. All right, now let's build it, step by step. Step 1. The frame and the wood that keeps it cheap. This is where you save the most money. Skip the pricey cedar and redwood at the store. Instead, hunt down reclaimed wood, old fence boards, pallet wood, leftover lumber from a neighbor's project. Folks give this away all the time. Now, here's a safety point I want you to hear clearly, because there's a lot of bad information out there. Modern treated wood, the kind called ACQ, is considered safe for food beds by the Extension Services. The real thing to avoid is old salvaged wood from before 2004. That older treated lumber could contain arsenic, so if you're reusing wood, and I hope you are, just stick with plain untreated boards. Or, if you're not sure how old a board is, line the inside of your bed with a sheet of plastic before you add soil. That keeps your vegetables and the wood completely separated. Don't panic about this. Plain old fence boards and pallet wood are perfectly fine. Just be a little choosy. Where do you find this wood for free? It's easier than you think. Check the marketplace listings online, where people give away pallets and old fence boards every single day. Ask at a local hardware store, since they often have broken pallets out back. And just keep an eye on the curb on trash day. One good wooden pallet, broken down carefully, can give you most of the boards you need. Build your box first. 4 boards, screwed at the corners. That's it. Keep it simple. Pre-drill a little hole before each screw so the old wood doesn't split on you. Take your time and make those corners square. A square box is a sturdy box. Step 2. The legs. To bring it up to height. This is what turns a regular ground-level bed into a no-bend one. You're going to add 4 sturdy legs, 1 at each corner, tall enough to lift the top of your box to that 30 to 36 inch mark. 4x4 posts work beautifully. but even doubled up 2x4s will do the job. Screw them firmly to the inside corners of your box. Add a cross brace low down between the legs on each end. That brace is non-negotiable. It's what keeps the whole thing from wobbling when it's loaded with heavy, wet soil. And trust me, wet soil is heavier than it looks. Here's a tip most people skip. Stand the legs on a couple of flat paver stones or bricks instead of right on the dirt. That keeps the wood up off the wet ground, so it lasts years longer before it ever rots. A $2 paver can add 5 years to your bed. Your neighbors will ask if you bought it from a catalog. You did not. Now stand back. You've got a box, up on legs, at the perfect height. But if you fill that whole thing with soil, it'll cost a fortune and weigh a ton. So here's the trick I promised you. Step 3. The false bottom. This is the part most people get backwards. They try to fill a tall bed all the way to the bottom with bagged soil. That's a lot of money and a lot of weight your legs have to hold up. Don't do it. Instead, build a false floor about 8 to 12 inches down from the top rim. You can do this with a few slats of scrap wood laid across, with gaps between them for drainage. Then, lay a piece of landscape fabric over the slats. The fabric holds the soil up top, but lets water drain right through. Here's why this works. Your plants only need the soil near the surface. Everything below that false floor can be filled with something far cheaper, or even free. And that's exactly what we do next. Step 4. Fill it smart, the old-fashioned way. This is a method called hugelkultur, and Grandma's generation used it long before it had a fancy name. Down in the bottom, below your false floor, you pile in free yard waste. Logs, branches, twigs, dead leaves, grass clippings. Pack it in. As that wood slowly breaks down over the years, it holds moisture and feeds your plants for free. The extension services say this can cut your soil cost by 40 to 60%. Lay the biggest logs and branches down first, then fill the gaps with the smaller twigs. After that, a layer of leaves and grass clippings to tuck it all in. Don't be shy. Pack it full, right up to your false floor. It'll settle over time, and that's perfectly normal. You can always top it off next season. Then, on top, in that top 8 to 12 inches, you put the good stuff. A mix of quality garden soil and compost. A simple rule of thumb is about 2 parts soil to 1 part compost. That top layer is the only soil you actually buy. So instead of filling the whole 36 inches, you're only paying for about 10. That, right there, is how a bed like this comes in under $50, and almost nobody thinks to do it. Let's break those dollars down so you know it's real. Step 5. The under 50 breakdown. Now, I'll be honest with you. If you run out and buy brand new lumber, this bed will cost you more. The under 50 number works when you use reclaimed wood. So here's roughly where the money goes. The wood, if you scavenge it, is free. A box of good screws runs you around $10. A piece of landscape fabric for the false floor, maybe $8. And then 1 or 2 bags of quality soil and compost for that top layer, somewhere around $25 to $35. Add it up, and you're right around $50, give or take. The free yard waste in the bottom is doing the heavy lifting on cost. Spend more, only if you choose to. And here's the thing to remember. A store-bought elevated bed at $200 or $300 is filled the expensive way, all soil, top to bottom. You're getting the very same standing height comfort for a fraction of the price, just by being a little clever about what goes in the bottom. That's grandma thinking. Use what you've got. Buy only what you must. And once it's built and filled, there's one last thing to get right. Step 6. What to actually plant in it. This matters, so you're not disappointed. Remember, you've got about 8 to 12 inches of good soil up top. That depth is perfect for what we call shallow-rooted crops. Lettuce, spinach, and all your leafy greens. Herbs like basil and parsley. bush beans, radishes, green onions. These will thrive up there at waist height, and you'll harvest them standing tall, with the basket right beside you. Picture snipping a handful of fresh lettuce for dinner without once bending over. That's the whole reward, right there. Now, here's the honest part, because I won't oversell this to you. Deep-rooted crops, like full-size carrots, potatoes, and parsnips, want 12 to 18 inches of soil to stretch out and grow straight. They just won't do their best in a shallow top layer. So if those are your dream crops, you've got two easy choices. Either make that top soil layer a good bit deeper when you build, or simply pick the shorter, rounder varieties that are bred for containers. There are lovely little round carrots that do just fine in less depth. Either way, no surprises and no disappointment come harvest time. So let's bring it all home. You've built a bed at counter height, so your back stays straight. You used free reclaimed wood, so your wallet stays full. You added a false bottom and filled below it with free yard waste, so the soil cost shrank to almost nothing. And you've planted the crops that love that depth. Grow your food, save your back, and spend almost nothing doing it. One quick, sensible note before you start. There's some lifting and building here, so if you've got a back or a joint condition, get a helping hand with the heavy parts, or check for your doctor first. No rush. Build it over a couple of easy afternoons if you'd rather, and set it low and steady enough that the grandkids can pull up a stool and help you fill it. That's a memory worth more than the vegetables. If you do just one thing this week, do this. Walk out back and measure a spot about 4 feet long. That's your bed. That's where you stop kneeling for good. Tell me down in the comments. Are you building yours from pallets or old fence boards? I read every single one. Happy gardening.